The defibrillator whined to full charge at 360 joules. Dr. Harrison Webb pressed the paddles against Lieutenant Ava Kane's chest, his knuckles white beneath blue nitrile gloves, stained with her blood. Clear. The UH-60 Black Hawk MEDEVAC banked hard left over the Hindu Kush, 11,000 feet above sea level. Rotors screaming against thin mountain air that wanted nothing more than to swallow them whole. The shock ripped through Ava's body, arching her spine against the restraints. Her vitals monitor flatline for the third time in 9 minutes. Staff Sergeant Mira Cole gripped the cargo netting above her head, her boots planted wide on the blood-slicked deck plates. She watched the woman she'd once called partner, once called sister, once called the deadliest sniper in naval special warfare, dying under red cabin lights that painted everything the color of arterial spray. No response. Webb shouted over the rotors, charging to 360 again. Ava's call sign was Frostbite. She'd earned it in the Karengal Valley. 2019, a single shot at 1,847 meters in a blizzard that killed an HVT and saved 17 Marines. The temperature that day had been negative 14 degrees. Her trigger finger never trembled. Now that same finger lay motionless on the litter. Her left lung held a 7.62 millimeters round that had punched through her plate carrier's side seam at an angle that shouldn't have been possible. Her right lung had collapsed from pressure. The pulse oximeter read 71% and falling. 17 minutes of oxygen, Cole said, calculating the math that would determine whether Frostbite lived or died. 17 minutes to Bagram's surgical. She won't make 17. Webb's voice carried the weight of a man who pronounced too many dead in these mountains. I can keep her heart beating, maybe, but her brain's already hypoxic. Every second without adequate perfusion. I know what hypoxia does. Then you know I'm losing her. The helicopter lurched. Turbulence ripped through the Hindu Kush like the mountains themselves were trying to tear the aircraft apart. Specialist Torres, the crew chief, fought the 50 cal mount near the open door, scanning the darkness for threats they all knew were out there. Somewhere behind them, 23 kilometers southeast, Ava's overwatch position was still hot. The quick reaction force was still 30 minutes out, and the enemy was still hunting. Cole's eyes locked onto the woman on the litter. Ava Kane, 31 years old, 8 deployments, 47 confirmed kills, 2 Navy crosses, and 6 inches. 6 inches of wind drift that haunted her for 3 years. If that opening hooked you, stay with me. This story only gets more intense. Subscribe now for more real stories of courage, and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. For hours earlier, the mission had been textbook, Operation Phantom Reach, a joint DevGru and CIA reconnaissance element tasked with confirming the location of a high-value target in a compound 1,100 meters below Ava's overwatch position. No kinetic action, no direct engagement, just eyes on target and confirmation. Cole had been on the bird as part of the standby MEDEVAC crew. When the call came through, the ground element had made contact. Ava was down, and everything that could go wrong in the mountains of Afghanistan had gone wrong simultaneously. Give me another AP, Webb ordered, already prepping the syringe. 0.3 milligrams. Cole passed the epinephrine, her hands steady despite the chaos. She'd been a sniper spotter once. She understood steady hands. She understood the mathematics of life and death measured in millimeters and windage. She understood Ava Kane better than anyone else on this helicopter, which was precisely why she'd volunteered for this MEDEVAC rotation. The epinephrine went into Ava's foreline. Webb watched the monitor, his jaw tight. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, Lieutenant." Nothing. The heart stayed silent. The brain kept dying. And the mountains kept trying to kill them all. Cole thought about the last time she'd seen Ava's eyes open. It had been 14 months ago at a memorial service in Virginia Beach. They hadn't spoken. Ava had looked right through her like she wasn't there, and Cole had understood. Some wounds didn't heal. Some failures couldn't be forgiven. 6 inches. A bullet that should have saved a life and instead took one. Charging, Webb said. Clear. The paddles fired. Ava's body jerked. The monitor screamed its steady flatline tone, a sound that had become the anthem of Cole's nightmares. "We're losing her," Torres called from the door. "Doc," We're losing her, and we got possible hostiles on the ridge at our 7 o'clock. Pilot says we can't slow down. I'm not slowing down anything. Webb snapped. I'm trying to restart her heart. Cole's fingers found the scar on her right hand. The through and through from Hellman Province that had ended her career as a spotter and started her second life as a flight medic. She wanted to keep saving lives, even if she couldn't do it from behind a scope anymore. Now she was watching the best sniper she'd ever known bleed out on a litter, and all her training, all her experience, all her medical knowledge felt worthless. Ava's lips were turning blue, cyanosis spreading from her extremities inward, the body's final protest against oxygen starvation. Her chest rose and fell with the mechanical rhythm of the BVM bag Webb's assistant was squeezing, but it wasn't enough. The blood wasn't carrying enough oxygen. The heart wasn't pumping enough blood. One more round, Webb said. One more. Then I have to consider calling it. Calling it. 2 words that meant failure. 2 words that meant death. 2 words that meant Cole would spend the rest of her life, knowing she'd been present for Ava Kane's final moments and done nothing but watch. No. Something snapped in Cole's chest. Some barrier between her medical training and her operational instincts dissolved in an instant. Give me 30 seconds with her, Cole said. Webb looked up, confusion cutting through his exhaustion. What? Before you shock her again, give me 30 seconds. Staff Sergeant, with respect, this isn't the time for... I know her. Cole moved toward the head of the litter, her voice cutting through the rotor noise like a round down range. I know how her brain works. I know what keeps her fighting. Webb's eyes narrowed. Sweat dripped from his brow onto his surgical mask, leaving dark spots that spread like bloodstains. She's in VFib. Her brain is shutting down. There's nothing you can say that will... 30 seconds. If it doesn't work, you call it. But give me 30 seconds. Something in Cole's voice stopped him. Maybe it was a certainty. Maybe it was a desperation masquerading as confidence. Or maybe it was the fact that he'd already tried everything in his medical toolkit, and it wasn't working. 20, he said. You got 20 seconds. Cole dropped to her knees beside the litter. The deck plates were warm with Ava's blood, soaking through her flight suit at the knees. She leaned close to Ava's ear, close enough to smell the copper and cordite that clung to her skin. Frostbite. No response. The monitors continued their death chorus. Frostbite, this is Ghost Echo. Do you copy? The call sign tasted like dust and adrenaline, like 100 missions in the Hindu Kush and the Karengal, and the valleys that collected American blood like offerings to ancient gods. Ghost Echo, the spotter who saw everything. The voice in Frostbite's ear for 3 years of deployments. I have eyes on target, Cole continued, her voice shifting into the cadence of operational communication. Range to objective, 820 meters. Wind, left to right, 7 miles per hour. Elevation, plus 14 MOA. You're dialed. You're ready. But I need you to take the shot. Webb watched from 3 feet away, his hand hovering over the defibrillator controls. His face said this was insane. His silence said he had nothing better. Target is stationary, Cole said. Breathing cycle for seconds. You've got a 3-inch window. Same shot you made in Karengal. Same shot you made 1,000 times. But you have to squeeze now, Frostbite. You have to take the shot. The helicopter shuddered. Torres cursed at something outside. The monitors kept screaming. But Cole saw it. A twitch. A flutter beneath Ava's closed eyelids like REM sleep. Like dreaming. Like something deep in her dying brain was trying to respond to the only language it had ever truly understood. That's it, Cole breathed. Stay with me. Range confirmed. Wind steady. You're breathing. I see you breathing. Now take the shot. Take the shot. The heart monitor blipped. A single spike, jagged and weak, cutting through the flat line like a knife. Did you see that? Cole demanded. Webb, did you? I saw it. His voice had changed. Something approaching hope, or at least the absence of surrender. Keep talking. Whatever you're doing, keep talking. Cole grabbed Ava's hand. The same hand that had pulled triggers and adjusted windage dials and written letters home to a father who had never read them. Cold flesh against warm. The living try and pull the dying back from the edge. Frostbite, listen to me. I'm calling the wind. 7 miles per hour. Steady from your 3 o'clock. You're compensating 2.5 minutes right. Elevation, 14 MOA. Range, 820 meters. Target is breathing. You're breathing. We're both breathing, and I need you to stay with me. Another blip, then another. The rhythm was erratic, chaotic, a heart that had forgotten how to beat, trying to remember. AP's kicking in, Webb said, but his voice carried doubt. Or something is. It's not the AP. Cole tightened her grip on Ava's hand. It's her. She's fighting. With what? Her brain's been hypoxic for her. She's a sniper. Her brain knows how to function under stress. It knows how to filter out everything except the target and the shot. That's what I'm giving her. Focus, purpose, a reason to keep fighting. Webb shook his head, but he didn't argue. The blips were becoming more regular. Still weak, still dangerous, but present. Charging to 200, he said. Lower jowls. If we've got rhythm, I don't want to disrupt it. But she needs a real beat, not this flutter. Do it. He placed the paddles. Clear. The shock hit. Ava's body convulsed, and for a terrible second, the monitor went silent again. Then it beeped. A real beat. Irregular, struggling, but real. There. Webb exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for the past hour. There we go. Sinus rhythm. Barely, but it's holding. Cole didn't let go of Ava's hand. How long to Bagram? 14 minutes. Maybe 13 if Torres can squeeze more out of the airframe. She can make 14 minutes. Can she? Webb checked the pulse ox. 73%. Still critical. Still deadly. The bullet's still in her lung. Every breath she takes is moving it. If it shifts wrong, it'll tear through the pulmonary artery and we'll lose her in seconds. Then we keep her breathing shallow. We keep her breathing at all. Webb adjusted the BVM rate, his hands moving with the mechanical precision of a man who'd done this too many times. I don't know what you just did, Staff Sergeant. I don't know if it was the call signs or the tactical talk or just dumb luck, but she's alive. For now. Cole looked at Ava's face. Beneath the oxygen mask and the blood and the gray pallor of oxygen deprivation, she could still see the woman she'd known, the woman she'd failed. She's alive because she's a fighter, Cole said quietly. She always has been. The helicopter banked north, climbing to clear a ridgeline that rose out of the darkness like a wall of stone and shadow. Below them, somewhere in those mountains, a recon element was still fighting for extraction. Above them, stars burned cold and indifferent in a sky that had watched 10,000 years of warfare and would watch 10,000 more. And in the back of a Black Hawk MEDEVAC, two women from the same shattered past clung to each other across the divide between life and death. 14 minutes. 820 miles of mountain air. One bullet waiting to kill her. The story of how they got here had started long before tonight. It had started with partnership forged in blood and trust, broken by 6 inches of miscalculated wind, and rewritten in the 3 years of silence that followed. To understand why Cole's voice could reach Ava when medicine couldn't, you had to understand what they'd been to each other, what they'd lost, and what Ava had carried on her shoulders every day since the shot that should have been perfect. The year was 2019. The place was Forward Operating Base Chapman, in the eastern mountains of Afghanistan, 40 kilometers from the Pakistani border. The unit was SEAL Team 3, Echo Platoon, 16 operators, 2 snipers, and a war that had been grinding on for 18 years. Staff Sergeant Mira Cole had arrived at Chapman with 3 years of combat deployments and a reputation for being the steadiest spotter in naval special warfare. Her accuracy in calling wind, range, and elevation adjustments had become the stuff of quiet legend, the kind of legend that operators talked about over whiskey, but never put in official reports. Lieutenant Ava Kane had arrived with 5 deployments, a Navy Cross, and the cold silence of a woman who didn't need friends, didn't want friends, and trusted exactly 2 things in this world, her rifle and herself. They'd been paired by command, not by choice. I don't need a spotter, Ava had said on their first day. They were in the team room, surrounded by weapons racks and mission planning maps. The smell of gun oil and coffee thick in the air. I've been shooting solo for 2 years. Cole had set her kit bag down, methodical and unhurried. Then you've been leaving capability on the table for 2 years. Excuse me? A sniper without a spotter is operating at 60% effectiveness. You're responsible for target identification, range estimation, wind calls, security, and the shot itself. That's 5 jobs. I take 3 of those jobs off your plate. You focus on the trigger. I focus on everything else. Ava's eyes had narrowed, ice blue like glacial melt. You think you're better at wind calls than I am? I know I am. Cole met her gaze without flinching. I've spotted for 7 shooters across 3 platoons. 4 of them broke personal accuracy records within 2 weeks of working with me. One of them hit a target at 2,100 meters in variable crosswinds that would have made most shooters pack up and go home. And you think you could do that for me? I think you haven't seen what you're capable of, Lieutenant, and I think that's a waste. The silence stretched between them, thick with tension and unspoken challenge. Around them, other operators pretended not to watch while absolutely watching. Then Ava smiled. It was small, barely perceptible, but it was there. Fine, she said. Prove it. They'd gone to the range the next morning. Long-distance precision shooting. Targets at 800 to 1,500 meters. Variable wind conditions. Cole called corrections. Ava pulled triggers. By the end of the session, Ava had hit 12 for 12 at distances that would have challenged Olympic marksmen. You're good, Ava admitted afterward, her rifle cradled across her lap as they sat in the shade of an HESCO barrier. You're better. Cole uncapped her canteen. You got instincts I've never seen. The problem is, you don't trust anyone else to support those instincts. Trust gets people killed. So does isolation. Ava looked away, toward the mountains that rose in the distance like teeth against the sky. You don't know anything about me, Staff Sergeant. I know you lost your father in the Karengal. Command Sergeant Major Kane. IED 2008. Ava's jaw tightened. That's not relevant. It's entirely relevant. You've been trying to prove something ever since. To him, to yourself, to everyone who ever said a woman couldn't be the best sniper in the SEAL community. You push yourself harder than anyone else because you think that's what strength looks like. It is what strength looks like. No, that's what isolation looks like. Strength is knowing when to let someone else watch your back. The mountains didn't answer. Neither did Ava at first. But over the following weeks, something shifted. Trust didn't come easily to her. It came in millimeters, like adjusting a scope for long-range precision. Small movements. Incremental progress. But it came. By their 4th mission together, they developed a communication style that bordered on telepathic. Cole would murmur wind corrections. Ava would adjust before the words finished leaving Cole's mouth. In the field, they moved like extensions of the same organism, reading terrain and threat and opportunity with shared instinct. Ghost Echo, this is Frostbite. Eyes on target. Range, 1140. Wind steady from your 2, 8 miles per hour. You're dialed, taking the shot. The crack of the Macmillan TAC 338 would echo through the valley, and somewhere in the distance, an enemy combatant would drop. Clean, precise, professional. They save lives. Dozens of them. Marines on patrol who never knew how close they'd come to ambush. Army convoys that passed through kill zone seconds after Ava's bullet removed the triggerman. Intelligence operatives who extracted safely because Frostbite and Ghost Echo had eliminated the watching eyes. And somewhere in the middle of all that death, they became something like friends. It happened slowly. Shared meals in the DFAC. Conversations about home that revealed more than either of them intended. Ava talked about her father, eventually, about the way his death had left a crater in her family that none of them knew how to fill. Cole talked about her mother, a Vietnam-era nurse who'd served at a MASH unit near Da Nang, and how she'd grown up with the understanding that some people were born to save lives, even if it meant spending their own. You should have been a doctor, Ava said one night, sitting on the roof of their barracks, watching tracers arc across the valley like falling stars. I should have been a lot of things. Cole shrugged, but this is where I ended up. Calling wind for you. Any regrets? Not yet. Ava was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm glad they paired us, Cole. Yeah, you were right. I didn't know what I was capable of. It was as close to vulnerability as Frostbite ever got. Cole had understood the weight of those words, the trust they represented. She'd promised herself, in that moment, that she would never let Ava down. 8 months later, she would break that promise. The mission was called Operation Silent Thunder, A joint operation with Delta Force to eliminate a Taliban commander named Hafiz al-Rashid, responsible for the deaths of over 60 American service members through a network of IED cells and ambush teams. Al-Rashid had been on the kill list for 3 years. He'd survived 2 Hellfire strikes and 1 JSOC raid. He was careful, paranoid, and surrounded by the best security the Taliban could buy. The plan was simple. Delta would insert via helicopter to a staging point 3 kilometers from the compound. Ava and Cole would provide overwatch from a ridge 1,847 meters to the northeast, giving them eyes on the target building and the approach routes. When al-Rashid appeared, Ava would take the shot. Delta would mop up the security forces. Exfil within 45 minutes. Simple, clean, textbook. The night had been perfect. Cold but calm, with visibility stretching across the valley like a gift from the operational gods. They'd been in position for 6 hours when the target emerged. Ghost Echo, eyes on target. Cole adjusted her spotting scope, heart rate steady despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. Al-Rashid stood in the doorway of the compound, flanked by 2 bodyguards, illuminated by a single lantern that cast long shadows across the dirt courtyard. Confirmed. Target identified. Range 1,847 meters. Wind. Cole watched the indicators. Prayer flags on a nearby building. Dust particles in the moonlight. The subtle bend of scrub brush on the slope below. Light variable, she said. 2 to 4 miles per hour, left to right. Compensate half a minute right, half a minute right. Confirmed. Ava's breathing slowed. The Macmillan settled against her shoulder like an extension of her skeleton. Her finger found the trigger with the intimacy of a decade's practice. On target, ready to fire. Send it. The rifle cracked. The round left the barrel at 2,960 feet per second, crossing nearly 2 kilometers of mountain air in a shade over 2 seconds. Cole tracked through her scope, watching the vapor trail disappear into the darkness. The bullet missed. It struck the wall 6 inches to al-Rashid's right, spraying stone fragments across the courtyard. The target flinched, then bolted. His bodyguards dragged him inside. Lights went out. Radios crackled. And in the space of 3 heartbeats, the mission went from textbook to catastrophe. Miss, Cole breathed. Target is... I saw it. Ava's voice was ice. I saw it. Wind shifted. At the last second, I should have... Don't. Ava's hands were already working the bolt, chambering another round. It's done. Focus on exfil. But it wasn't done. The miss had triggered the compound's alert protocols. Security forces flooded into the courtyard. Vehicle engines roared to life. And somewhere in that chaos, al-Rashid reached a radio and issued orders. 3 hours later, a Delta operator named Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, no relation to flight surgeon, stepped on an IED that al-Rashid's network had even placed as insurance. The explosion took both his legs and most of his right arm. He died during MEDEVAC, 73 minutes after the surgery team lost their battle against the bleeding. Marcus Webb had been 24 years old. He'd been engaged to a nurse in Fort Bragg named Sarah. They were supposed to get married in April. The official report attributed the mission failure to unforeseen environmental factors affecting precision engagement. The wind had shifted at the exact wrong moment, pushing the bullet 6 inches right of its intended trajectory. A statistical anomaly, an act of God. No fault attributed to the sniper or the spotter. But Ava knew, and Cole knew. I should have caught it, Cole said in the debrief room, hours after they returned to Chapman. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The wind signature changed at the last second. I saw the flag shift. I should have called a hold. You called what you saw. Lieutenant Commander Phillips's voice was tired. The shift happened after the round was away. There was nothing either of you could have done. 6 inches. Ava's voice came from the corner of the room, where she stood with her back against the wall, face expressionless. 6 inches and Webb is dead. Lieutenant, we killed him. Ava's eyes found Cole's. Something in them had broken. Not rage, not grief, something deeper. I pulled the trigger. She called the wind, and we killed him. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. Cole had opened her mouth to respond, to argue, to say something that might bridge the chasm open between them. But Ava had already left. The door slammed behind her like a gunshot, and Cole stood alone in the debrief room, trying to understand how a partnership built on trust had shattered into space a single missed shot. They never spotted together again. Ava requested solo operations. Command approved. Cole was reassigned to a different platoon, then a different unit entirely. They saw each other occasionally, passing in hallways, sitting on opposite sides of memorial services, but they never spoke. The silence between them grew thicker with every month, filling with guilt and recrimination, and all the words neither of them knew how to say. Then Cole's hand got hit. It was 3 months after Operation Silent Thunder, during a routine patrol in Helmand Province. An ambush, AK-47 rounds tearing through their position. Cole caught a 7.62 millimeters through her right palm, shattering the bones that allowed her to work the adjustment dials of a spotting scope with micrometer precision. Surgery saved the hand. It didn't save her career. You can still shoot, the medical officer told her, but the fine motor control you need for precision spotting work. I'm sorry, Staff Sergeant. It's gone. Cole had stared at her bandaged hand for a long time after that conversation. The hand that had failed Ava. The hand that had cost Marcus Webb his life. Now it would never spot for anyone again. Some punishments, she thought, come dressed as mercy. 14 months passed. Cole retrained as a flight medic, earning her emergency medical technician certification and then her paramedic credentials in record time. She volunteered for MEDEVAC rotations in the most dangerous operating areas, telling herself it was because she wanted to save lives, knowing deep down that she was also trying to repay a debt that could never be balanced. Ava continued her solo operations. Her kill count climbed. Her reputation grew. She became the shooter other snipers talked about in hushed tones, the legend who could drop targets at distances that bordered on impossible. She also became the ghost who never smiled, never celebrated, never allowed anyone close enough to matter. They existed in parallel lines, both serving in the same theater, both carrying the same weight, both pretending the other didn't exist. Until tonight. The recon mission had launched at 0200 local time. Operation Phantom Reach. A 12-operator element from DevGru, tasked with confirming the location of another high-value target. This one a bomb maker responsible for attacks across 3 provinces. Intelligence suggested he'd be at a compound in the Hindu Kush for exactly 1 night, then disappear into Pakistan. Ava had been attached as Overwatch. Solo as always. She'd set up on a ridge 1,100 meters from the objective, her Macmillan dial for the altitude and the thin mountain air. The mission parameters were simple: observe and report. No engagement unless compromised. 4 hours. Everything went according to plan. The ground element moved into position. The target was confirmed. Photographs were taken. Intel was gathered. The exfil plan was solid. Hello's 30 minutes out. Extraction point secure. No signs of enemy activity. Then the ambush hit. Cole had heard the radio traffic from the MEDEVAC staging area. Calm voices becoming urgent. Reports of heavy fire. Requests for immediate extraction. And then, Frostbite is down. I repeat, Frostbite is down. We need MEDEVAC at her position. Now. The words had cut through Cole like a blade. She'd been moving before the call finished, grabbing her kit, sprinting toward the idling Blackhawk where Webb and his team were prepping. I'm coming with you. Webb had looked at her strangely. You're not on the roster for this bird. I am now. Let's go. They'd lifted off into the darkness, climbing into the mountains that had swallowed so many American lives over the past 2 decades. Below them, tracers split the night. Above them, stars watched with the indifference of eternity. 23 minutes from staging to Ava's position. 23 minutes of Cole's mind spinning through every possibility. Gunshot wound. IED. Fall from the ridge. Each scenario worse than the last. When they touched down in the LZ, the ground team was already carrying Ava toward the bird. Even in the darkness, even through the chaos of rotor wash and shouting voices, Cole could see the blood. It soaked through the pressure dressings. It stained the hands of the operators holding her. It left a trail in the dust like a red rope unwinding behind her. Bullet wound. Left chest. The team leader shouted as they loaded her onto the bird, entered through the side seam of her plate. We couldn't stop the bleeding. Cole grabbed the litter rail, helping guide Ava into position. The woman's eyes were closed. Her face was gray. Her breathing was a wet, ragged sound of lungs filling with fluid. How long since she was hit? 14 minutes. She walked herself to the rally point. Wouldn't let anyone carry her until she collapsed. Of course she wouldn't. Cole's chest tightened. Of course she would refuse help even as she was dying. The bird lifted off. Webb went to work immediately, establishing for access, checking airways, assessing the damage. Cole assisted where she could, passing equipment, monitoring vitals, trying to keep her hands from shaking. It's bad, Webb said quietly, once they cleared the initial chaos. The bullets lodged in her left lung, probably nicked the bronchial tree. Her right lung collapsed from the trauma. She's drowning in her own blood. Can you fix it? Not here. We need a surgical suite. I can keep her alive, maybe, but I can't fix this. 17 minutes to Bagram. 17 minutes of flight time over hostile territory, with a patient who was dying by the second. Then keep her alive. Webb had done everything right. Fluids, pressors, oxygen. He'd managed her ventilation, calculated her drug dosages, done every single thing that medical training said to do in this situation. But Ava's heart had stopped anyway. The first time, Webb had gotten it back in 90 seconds. The second time, 2 minutes. The third time, the time that started all of this, they'd been 3 minutes into CPR when Cole had asked for her 30 seconds. Now, with a fragile heartbeat finally holding, they had 14 minutes left to save her. Ghost echo. Cole looked down. Ava's lips were moving. The words were barely audible, whispered to the oxygen mask. But they were there. I'm here. Cole leaned closer. I'm here, Frostbite. I heard you. Ava's eyes remained closed, but her fingers twitched against a litter. I heard the wind call. I know you did. It was wrong. Cole's heart clenched. What? The wind at thunder. It shifted after. I pulled. Not before. Ava's voice was fading. Each word a battle. I watched the replay 100 times. You called it right. I should have held. Ava, it was my fault. A single tear traced down her temple, disappearing into her blood-matted hair. Webb died because I was too proud to trust your call. Cole felt her own eyes burn. That doesn't matter now. What matters is keeping you alive. It matters. Ava's hand found Cole's, gripping with surprising strength for someone so close to death. I need you to know I never blamed you. I blamed myself, and I couldn't face you. After, stop talking. Save your energy. No. Ava's eyes opened, pale blue, like winter sky, like ice, like the woman she'd been named for. I need to say this. In case I don't. You're going to make it. I need to say it. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. For the silence. For the blame. For 3 years of pretending you didn't exist. I'm sorry, Ghost Echo. Cole gripped Ava's hand tighter. The helicopter shuddered through another pocket of turbulence. And somewhere in the cockpit, Torres was cursing at the airframe like it was a living thing that could hear his frustration. I'm sorry, too, Cole whispered. I should have called a hold. I should have trusted my instincts when the flags moved. You couldn't have known. Ava's voice was fading again, the brief surge of clarity draining away like sand through fingers. Neither of you could have known. 12 minutes. Webb called out. Vitals are holding, but she's losing too much blood. We need to get pressure on that lung. Cole looked up. What do you need? Hold her on her left side. Keep the damaged lung down. Let gravity help drain the fluid away from the good tissue. They repositioned the litter together, Webb and Cole working in synchrony despite the helicopter's constant movement. Ava groaned. A sound of pain, but also a sound of life. Pain meant she was still feeling. Feeling meant she was still fighting. Frostbite, Cole said, close to her ear. I need you to focus. Range to target, 820 meters. Wind from your 2 o'clock, 7 miles per hour steady. You're compensating 2 minutes right. Elevation, 14 MOA. Target is stationary. Breathing cycle for seconds. What are you doing? Webb asked, keeping her brain engaged. Cole's voice was steady, the cadence of 1,000 spotting calls flowing through her, without conscious thought. Her survival instinct is tied to operational awareness. If I can keep that part of her mind active, that's not medical science. No, it's something else. Ava's breathing stabilized slightly. Not perfect. Nothing about this was perfect, but better. The pulse ox crept up to 75%. Still critical, but moving in the right direction. Target is moving, Cole continued, improvising now, building a narrative that existed only in her words and Ava's fading consciousness. Tangent to your position. You're tracking. I'm reading the wind. It's dropping to 5 miles per hour. Just half a minute left. Half minute left, Ava murmured. Good, good. That's it. Stay with me. The target is at the door now. He's pausing. Wind is steady. Range is confirmed. You're ready. Ready. Webb shook his head, but he was also smiling. A small smile, exhausted and disbelieving, but present. You're actually getting through to her. I've been getting through to her for years. I just forgot how. The helicopter banked east, following the terrain to avoid known enemy positions. Outside the windows, the mountains pass in walls of black and gray, occasionally lit by distant flashes that might have been gunfire or might have been nothing at all. The night was full of death, full of danger, full of the 1,000 ways that Afghanistan had devised to kill Americans over 2 decades of war. But inside the bird, something else was happening. Something that transcended medicine and military doctrine and the regulations that governed how people were supposed to behave in combat zones. 2 women who had lost each other were finding their way back. 10 minutes. Torres called from the door. Bagram's lighting the surgical bay. They're ready for us. Copy. Webb checked the vitals again. She's stabilizing. I don't know how, but she's stabilizing. Cole didn't know how either, but she knew she wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not when Ava's eyes were staying closed, not from unconsciousness, but from concentration, her brain reaching for phantom target Cole was describing, her survival instinct locking onto the only anchor her mind knew how to hold. Target is clear, Cole said. You have the shot. Breathing cycle, exhale, squeeze on empty. 3, 2, 1. Send it, Ava whispered. Impact. Target down. You got him, Frostbite. You got him. A smile. Barely visible, ghosting across Ava's bloodstained lips, but unmistakable. The smile of a sniper completing a perfect shot. The smile of a woman who had found, in the depths of her dying, a reason to keep fighting. Ghost, echo. I'm here. That was a good call. Cole's vision blurred. She blinked the tears back, refusing to let them fall. There would be time for crying later. Right now, there was only the mission, only the shot. Only the wind and the range, and the bullet that had to find its target. It was all you, she said. I just called the wind. The helicopter crossed into the Bagram perimeter at 0347 local time. The surgical team was waiting on the pad, gown and ready, their faces masks of focus intensity beneath the harsh lights. They loaded Ava onto a gurney in seconds, moving with the choreographed precision of people who had done this too many times. Cole followed as far as she could. Through the doors of the trauma center, down the hallway that smelled of antiseptic and desperation, past the nurses and technicians who parted for the gurney like water around a stone. Then a hand stopped her. This is as far as you go, Staff Sergeant. Cole looked up. A surgeon, his face hidden behind a mask, his eyes carrying the weight of decisions that would determine whether Ava lived or died. She's Cole stopped. What was she going to say? My partner? My friend? My failure? Please. I need to. I know. His voice softened. But we've got her now. You did your job. Let us do ours. The doors swung closed. Beyond them, Ava disappeared into the bright lights and beeping monitors and the sterile precision of emergency surgery. Cole stood in the hallway, her hands still stained with blood that was drying to rust on her skin, and watched until there was nothing left to watch. 7 hours. That's how long the surgery took. 7 hours of Cole sitting in the waiting area, drinking coffee that tasted like motor oil, watching the clock on the wall tick through each minute like it was personally offended by her existence. Twice, nurses came out with updates. She's holding, and the bullet's out, but there's significant damage. And each time, Cole's heart stopped and restarted in a rhythm that echoed Ava's struggle on the helicopter. Webb found her at hour 4. He cleaned up, changed into fresh scrubs, and looked almost human again beneath the fluorescent lights. You saved her life, he said, sitting down beside her. You saved her life. I just talked. No. He shook his head. I was ready to call it. 2 minutes post-flatline. No response to standard resuscitation protocols. By the book, she was gone. You gave me 30 seconds, and in those 30 seconds, you reached something in her that I couldn't touch. That's not just talking. That's something else. Cole stared at her hands. The scar from Hellman was visible beneath the dried blood. The hand that had ended her career. The hand that had, tonight, helped save the woman she'd failed 3 years ago. We were partners, she said, before, during Operation Silent Thunder, and a dozen missions before that. We were good together. And then I made a mistake, and she made a mistake, and someone died because of it. We've been carrying that ever since. And tonight, I remember what it felt like. To be in sync with someone. To know exactly what they need without asking. She looked up at him. I don't know if that's medical. I don't know if it's military. But I know it's real. Webb was quiet for a moment. Then, in my experience, the things that save lives aren't always in the textbooks. Sometimes they're in the connections we make with people. The trust. The understanding. He stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of surgery. She's going to make it, Cole. Thanks to you. Thanks to all of us. He nodded and walked away, leaving Cole alone with her thoughts and the ticking clock and the knowledge that somewhere in that surgical suite, Ava Kane was fighting for every breath. Dawn came to Bagram Airfield like a cautious visitor, painting the mountains pink and gold before committing to full daylight. The surgical team emerged at 0522, exhausted but smiling, with news that Lieutenant Kane had survived the operation and was being transferred to the ICU. Cole had been the first one there when they wheeled Ava's bed into the recovery bay. The woman who had cheated death in a Black Hawk helicopter looked impossibly small beneath the white sheets, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed and kept her tethered to the world of the living. Tubes ran into her arms, her chest, her throat. A ventilator breathed for her while her lungs healed. But she was alive. Cole sat beside the bed for 8 hours, leaving only when her bladder threatened to make good on its complaints. She watched the monitors, listened to the rhythmic hiss of the ventilator, talked to Ava even though she couldn't hear, telling her about the missions they'd shared, the shots that had landed, the sunrises they'd watched from overwatch positions across a dozen countries. You always hated the cold, Cole said during hour 5, her voice hoarse from talking. Remember that morning in Hindu Kush, January 2019? It was -20 with wind chill, and you kept complaining that your trigger finger was going to freeze off. I told you that's why God invented hand warmers. You told me that God had never tried to shoot a rifle in a blizzard, or he would have designed human bodies differently. The machines beat their steady rhythm. Ava's chest rose and fell with mechanical precision. And then you took that shot. 1,847 meters. Clean kill. The Marines you saved never even knew your name. But I knew. I was right there with you, watching through my scope, calling the wind. That was the best moment of my career, Frostbite. Not because of the shot, but because I knew that we could do anything together. We were invincible. She fell silent, watching the monitors flicker through their endless cycle of numbers and graphs. I should have known that kind of partnership doesn't survive mistakes. Nothing that perfect survives contact with failure. But I wish, her voice caught, I wish we had more time. Before Silent Thunder. Before everything broke. I wish we'd had one more mission. One more sunrise. One more shot to call. The ventilator hissed. The monitors beeped. And somewhere in that bed, behind closed eyes and a pharmacological haze, Ava's brain continued its slow journey back to consciousness. The doctors said it would be days before she woke up. They said the damage to her lungs would take months to heal. They said she might never shoot again, might never deploy again, might never be the operator she'd been before a bullet tore through her chest in the mountains of Afghanistan. Cole stayed anyway. She stayed through the shift changes and the doctor consultations and the moments when alarms went off and nurses rushed in and Cole's heart stopped until they said it was just a sensor malfunction. She stayed through the visits from Ava's teammates, grim-faced SEALs who stood at the foot of the bed like honor guards at a funeral, paying respects to a sister who had almost died. She stayed even when Lieutenant Commander Phillips found her on day 3 and said, Staff Sergeant Cole, you need to eat. You need to sleep. This isn't sustainable. With respect, sir, I'm not leaving. Phillips studied her for a long moment. He'd been their commanding officer during Silent Thunder. He knew the history. He knew the weight. You can't fix what happened by sitting here. I know that, sir. Then why stay? Cole looked at Ava's motionless face. The ventilator tube. The monitors. The fragile life that hung by threads she couldn't see. Because I left her once. After the mission. After the silence started. I let it happen. I let us become strangers. She met Phillips's eyes. I'm not leaving her again. He didn't argue. He didn't order her to rest. He just nodded once with something that might have been understanding and walked away. On day 4, Ava woke up. It happened slowly. A flutter of eyelids, a twitch of fingers against the sheets. The ventilator had been removed the day before, replaced by a nasal cannula that hissed oxygen into her damaged lungs. Her first breath on her own had been the most beautiful sound Cole had ever heard. Ragged, painful, but real. Now those pale blue eyes opened, blinking against the fluorescent lights, taking in the room with the slow focus of someone surfacing from a deep dive. Cole leaned forward. Hey! Ava's gaze found her. For a moment, there was nothing, just a confusion of waking from a long sleep, of trying to reconcile consciousness with the last memory of darkness and pain. Then Ghost echo. Her voice was a whisper. Raw. Broken. But it was her voice. Yeah. Cole felt herself smiling. The first real smile in days. I'm here. You stayed. I told you I would. Ava's eyes searched her face, looking for something. Maybe truth. Maybe deception. Maybe the same thing Cole had been searching for during all those hours at her bedside. I thought I was dead, Ava said. I thought I was dreaming. Your voice. The wind calls. The mission that wasn't real. It was real. I was calling your name. Calling our call signs. Trying to bring you back. You did. Ava's hand moved, reaching slowly across the sheets until her fingers touched Cole's wrist. You brought me back. Cole covered Ava's hand with her own. The contact was warm, alive, a connection that bridged 3 years of silence in a single moment. I never stopped being your spotter, Cole said quietly, even when we weren't talking, even when I thought you hated me. I was always watching your back. I just forgot how to tell you. I didn't hate you. Ava's eyes were glistening. I hated myself for the shot, for Webb, for being too proud to admit that I needed you. Her voice broke. I've been alone for 3 years, Cole, and I didn't know how to stop. You don't have to be alone anymore. No. A fragile hope flickered in Ava's expression. After everything, Cole tightened her grip. We made mistakes. Both of us. We lost someone we couldn't save. But we don't have to lose each other too. The machines beeped. The oxygen hissed. And in a hospital room in Afghanistan, 2 warriors began the long process of healing wounds that no surgery could fix. Recovery was measured in small victories. Day 7. Ava walked to the bathroom with assistance. Her lungs burned with every step, and she had to stop twice to catch her breath, but she made it. Cole cheered like she'd just completed a marathon. Day 12. The chest tubes came out. Ava described the sensation as a snake being pulled out of my ribs, which made Cole laugh until she cried. Day 18. Ava threw a pillow at Cole for telling the physical therapist about the time she tripped over her own rifle case in the team room. The therapist laughed. Cole laughed. Even Ava laughed, though she immediately winced and grabbed her chest. Don't make me laugh, she complained. It hurts. Then stop being funny. I'm not funny. You're the one telling embarrassing stories. I got 3 years of stories saved up. Frostbite. We're just getting started. The darkness was still there. It lurked at the edges of conversations, in the silences that stretched a moment too long, in the nightmares that woke Ava at 0300 with cold sweat and pounding heart. Sometimes she would call out names, Webb, mostly, but also others, and Cole would sit with her until the panic passed. It wasn't your fault, Cole told her during one of those nights, when the moon was just a sliver outside the window and the rest of the ward was sleeping. It was the wind, Ava. The wind shifted after you pulled the trigger. I watched the footage. I analyzed the data. The shift happened in the space of a heartbeat. Neither of us could have predicted it. I could have waited, and Al-Rashi would have moved. The window was closing. You made the call that any sniper in your position would have made. But I missed. Yes, you missed. And Webb died. And that's a weight you'll carry forever. Cole's voice was gentle but firm. But it's not a weight that disqualifies you from living. It's not permission to spend the rest of your life punishing yourself. Ava stared at the ceiling, her jaw tight. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's never simple. But it's true. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sound of the hospital, the distant beeping of monitors, the soft footsteps of nurses on their rounds, the occasional helicopter landing or taking off from the pad outside. How do you do it? Ava finally asked. Do what? Keep going. After Hellman. After your hand. After everything you lost. Cole looked at her own scarred palm, tracing the raised tissue with her opposite thumb. I found a new purpose, she said. I couldn't spot anymore. The fine motor control was gone, but I could still save lives, just in a different way. She met Ava's eyes. That's what recovery is, I think. Finding a new way to be useful, a new reason to get up in the morning. And if you can't find one, then you keep looking. Until you do. Ava was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, will you help me? Look for one. Cole smiled. That's what spotters do. We watch the field. We call the wind. We help shooters find their targets. Even broken shooters? Especially broken shooters. Those are the ones who need us most. The medical evacuation to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany came on day 23. Ava was stable enough for transport, though the doctors warned that full recovery would take months, possibly longer. There was talk of medical discharge, of therapy, of a future that did include trigger pulls and wind calls. Ava faced it with the same cold determination she brought to her shooting, refusing to let pain show, refusing to let fear win. But Cole could see the cracks, the moments when Ava's mask slipped and the terrified woman beneath showed through. I don't know who I am without the rifle, Ava admitted during the flight to Germany, when it was just the two of them in the back of the C-17, surrounded by other wounded warriors heading home. You're Frostbite. Frostbite was a sniper. If I can't shoot, Frostbite was never just a sniper. Cole shifted in her seat, facing Ava across a narrow aisle. Frostbite was a person who memorized every evacuation route on every mission. The person who always carried extra med supplies in case someone else got hit. The person who stayed awake for 48 hours straight so her teammates could sleep during that nightmare in Kandahar. Ava looked away. That's just procedure. That's leadership. That's the person you are when the rifle isn't in your hands. And that person isn't going anywhere, no matter what the doctors say. The engines droned. The wounded slept or stared at nothing. And somewhere over the Atlantic, two women who had lost themselves began to find their way back. Landstuhl was followed by Walter Reed. Walter Reed was followed by a rehabilitation center in San Diego, where the ocean air was supposed to help heal lungs damaged by bullets in mountains and thin Afghan air. Cole was reassigned stateside by then, working as a training instructor for combat medics at Camp Pendleton. Close enough to visit, close enough to keep her promise. She showed up every weekend, sometimes every few days when her schedule allowed. She brought coffee and bad jokes and photos from their old deployments, images they'd never looked at together, frozen moments from a partnership they both tried to forget. Remember this one? Cole held up a picture of Ava in full ghillie suit, barely visible against a ridgeline that might have been Pakistan or might have been Mars. I was so hot in that thing, Ava said, grimacing. It was like wearing a carpet in a sauna. But you looked terrifying. The ground team said they had nightmares about bushes for weeks after that mission. Good. Fear is a weapon. Is that your philosophy of war? It's my philosophy of life. Ava's tone was lighter now than it had been in those first dark weeks. The rehabilitation was working. Her lungs were clearing. Her strength was returning. Fear the enemy. Fear failure. Fear mediocrity. What about fear of losing the people who matter? Ava's eyes found Cole's. That's the worst fear of all. Yeah. She reached out, covering Cole's hand with her own in an echo of their hospital moment in Bagram. I spent 3 years afraid of facing you. Afraid of what you'd say. Afraid of what I'd have to admit. And now I'm afraid of losing this. Whatever this is. Cole turned her hand over, interlacing their fingers. You're not going to lose it. I'm not going anywhere. Even if I can't shoot again. Even then. Even if I'm not Frostbite anymore. Cole squeezed her hand. You'll always be Frostbite to me, but you can be whoever else you want to be too. That's the thing about surviving, Ava. It gives you the chance to choose. The medical board's decision came 4 months after the shooting. Ava was medically retired with full honors, a Purple Heart and another Navy Cross for her actions during Operation Phantom Reach, specifically for walking herself to the extraction point while critically wounded, ensuring the rest of the team could escape without having to carry her through hostile terrain. The ceremony was small, just a team, a few brass hats, and Cole in the back row, watching the woman she'd once spotted receive recognition for nearly dying. After, when the medals were pinned and the hands were shaken and the crowd had dispersed, Ava found her near the parking lot. Congratulations, Cole said. You're officially a war hero. I was always a war hero. Now I'm just an unemployed war hero. Please, you're not unemployed. You're... Cole searched for the right word. Transitioning. To what? Civilian life? Ava made a face. I don't know how to be a civilian. Cole, I've been military since I was 18. So figure out. Easy for you to say. You've still got a job. I've got a job that feels pointless without you. The words came out before Cole could stop them. She paused, surprised by her own honesty. Teaching combat medics is fine. It's useful, but it's not the same. Ava studied her face. As what? As us. As being part of something together. The ocean was visible from the parking lot, a strip of gray-blue horizon beyond the buildings and the palm trees. Somewhere out there, operations were continuing. Missions were being run. Shots were being taken, and calls were being made. But none of that seemed to matter as much as this moment. This conversation. This woman. I've been thinking, Ava said slowly, about what you said in Germany, about finding a new purpose. Yeah, there's a program at Coronado, training for snipers, not active shooters, advisory, teaching the next generation how to operate, how to think, how to make the calls that keep people alive. Cole felt her pulse quicken. That sounds perfect for you. The catch is they want a full training team, a shooter and a spotter, someone to demonstrate the partnership, not just the individual skills. Ava's eyes met hers. I told them I knew someone who might be interested. For a moment, Cole couldn't speak. The possibility hung between them like a round suspended in flight, waiting to find its target. You wanted a spot for you again? I want you to work with me again, whatever that looks like. Ava's voice was careful, uncertain in a way that Frostbite had never been uncertain. I know I don't have a right to ask. After everything I did, after all those years of silence. Ava, but if there's any chance you consider it. Yes. The word stopped Ava mid-sentence. What? Yes. I'll do it. Whatever it is, wherever it takes us, yes. Cole stepped closer, close enough to see the faint scars still visible on Ava's neck from the chest tubes. I've spent 3 years waiting for this conversation, waiting for you to let me back in. I'm not going to say no just because you took too long to ask. Ava's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something warmer, something like hope. Just like that. Just like that. You don't want to think about it. I've had 3 years to think about it. Cole reached out, straightening the metal on Ava's chest that had tilted slightly off-center. I know exactly what I want. I want to be your spotter again, your partner, your friend. Whatever words fit, that's what I want. Ava caught her hand before she could pull away. And if I want more than that? The question hung in the salt-tinged air. Cole felt her breath catch, not from surprise, but from recognition. She'd known. Maybe she'd always known. The connection between them had never been just professional. Then I want that too. They stood there in the parking lot, hands intertwined, two warriors who had nearly lost each other finding their way to a new beginning. The ocean watched. The mountains waited. And somewhere in the distance, the future called them forward. But first, there was paperwork. Because this was a military, and even redemption required documentation. The Coronado posting came through 6 weeks later. Cole and Ava arrived on the same day, reporting to the Naval Special Warfare Advanced Training Command with matching orders and matching determination. The students called them the Ghosts, partly because of Cole's call sign, partly because Ava's pale eyes seemed to look right through them, seeing weaknesses they didn't know they had. Your breath control is off, Ava told a young sniper during their second week of instruction. She was positioned behind him on a range, her own rifle unloaded and resting beside her. You're taking a shot on the exhale, but you're not emptying fully. There's still movement. I'm trying, ma'am. Try harder. Your target isn't going to wait for you to perfect your technique. Beside Ava, Cole watched through her spotting scope, watching not the student, but Ava herself, watching the way her hands moved with remembered precision, watching the light in her eyes that had been missing for so long. Wind, left to right, 3 miles per hour, Cole called out. Adjust 1 minute. The student made the adjustment. Ava nodded. Now breathe. Full exhale. Empty lungs. No movement. The rifle cracked. Downrange, the target shattered. Better. Ava's voice carried approval that she rarely gave. That's what it feels like when everything comes together. The wind, the breath, the shot. When it's right, you'll know it. Yes, ma'am. They broke for lunch, the students scattering toward the DFAC, while Ava and Cole stayed behind on the range. The ocean was visible from here, too. Always the ocean. In San Diego, the endless blue that promised both freedom and forgetting. You're good at this, Cole said. At yelling at students? At teaching. You've got a gift for it. Ava shrugged, but Cole could see the pleasure beneath the dismissal. I'm just telling them what I wish someone had told me earlier, before I had to learn it all the hard way, including the stuff about partnership, especially that. Ava turned to face her, the sun catching the silver in her hair that hadn't been there before Afghanistan. I wasted years thinking I didn't need anyone, that I could do everything alone. And then I almost died in those mountains, and the only thing that brought me back was your voice. Cole felt her heart tighten. The spotter calls. Not just the calls. The connection. The knowledge that someone knew me well enough to reach me when nothing else could. Ava's voice softened. That's what I tell them now. The students. It's not about being the best shooter. It's about building the relationships that keep you alive when everything goes wrong. That's a hell of a lesson. It took a hell of a way to learn it. They stood together in the California sunshine, 2 women who had found their way through darkness to something like light. The first anniversary of the shooting came and went without fanfare. Cole woke Ava with coffee and a quiet acknowledgement. 1 year ago today, you scared the hell out of me. And they spent the morning on the range, drilling students in the same techniques that had once made them legends. The second anniversary, they took the day off, drove up the coast to a stretch of beach that looked nothing like Afghanistan, watched the waves roll in, and talked about everything except the mission that had nearly killed Ava. Do you ever regret it? Ava asked, her toes buried in the sand. Giving up spotting? Becoming a medic? Cole considered the question. Sometimes, when I see the young teams heading out, knowing where they're going, knowing what they're walking into, there's a part of me that wishes I was still with them. But then I remember why I'm not. The hand. She flexed her scarred fingers. And I remember that if I hadn't retrained, I wouldn't have been on that bird with you. I wouldn't have known what to say to bring you back. Ava reached over, taking that scarred hand in her own. The worst thing that happened to you led to the best thing that happened to me. That's a very philosophical way to look at a bullet wound. I've had time to think. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun trace its arc toward the western horizon. Somewhere out in the world, operations were running. Shots were being taken. Lives were being saved and lost in equal measure. But here, on this beach, 2 women who had nearly lost everything found peace in simply being together. The teaching contract ran for 2 years. When it ended, they had options: extend, retire, take positions at other commands. They chose something different. A consulting firm, private sector, training security teams for companies operating in high-risk environments. It wasn't a military, but it kept their skills sharp and their partnership intact. Frostbite Consulting, Ava suggested, half joking. Ghost Echo Solutions, Cole countered. They settled on Overwatch Advisory Group, professional, accurate, and meaningful only to the 2 of them. The work took them around the world. Colombia, teaching counter-narcotic teams how to operate in jungle terrain. The Philippines, advising military units on urban sniper tactics. Iraq again, briefly, training Iraqi security forces in techniques that American troops had developed over 2 decades of war. Each mission was a chance to pass on what they'd learned. Each partnership they trained was an echo of their own. 2 people learning to trust each other, to communicate without words, to become extensions of the same organism. We're building something, Cole said one night in a hotel room in Manila, rain drumming against the windows. Something that outlasts us. That's the goal, isn't it? Ava was reviewing training reports, her reading glasses perched on her nose. Leave something behind that matters. Is it enough? For you? Ava looked up. What do you mean? The life we have now, the work, the partnership. Is it enough, or do you still miss the operations, the real shots? The question hung between them. They'd never discuss it directly. The loss of Ava's active career, the permanent retirement that her lung damage had mandated. It was the elephant in every room, acknowledged but unexamined. Sometimes, Ava admitted finally, some days I wake up and my finger reaches for a trigger that isn't there. I dream about shots that need to be taken, targets that need to be eliminated, and I wake up feeling useless. You're not useless. I know, logically, but the feeling doesn't listen to logic. She set down the reports, removing her glasses. What I have now is different. The teaching, the advising, being with you, it's not the same rush, but it's sustainable. The operations weren't sustainable. I was burning out. I just didn't know it until I got shot. Cole moved to sit beside her on the bed. And now I wake up next to you. I teach young snipers how to stay alive. I build partnerships that will save lives for decades after I'm gone. A small smile crossed Ava's face. It's not the life I planned, but it's a good life. Better than I deserve, probably. You deserve better than you think. So do you. Cole leaned in, resting her forehead against Ava's. We're a match set, then. Two people who don't believe they deserve happiness, somehow finding it anyway. That sounds about right. The rain continued to fall. The reports went unfinished. And in a hotel room on the other side of the world, two women who had saved each other's lives continued the quieter work of building a future together. The reunion happened 4 months after that night in Manila. It wasn't planned. They were in Virginia Beach for a memorial service. Another teammate lost, another flag folded, another family left to grieve. The service was held at the base, and afterward, the survivors gathered at a bar that had seen too many of these gatherings. Cole was at the counter, ordering drinks, when she felt someone's eyes on her. She turned. Lieutenant Commander Phillips stood near the door, older now, gray streaking his temples, but still carrying himself with the authority of a man who had led warriors into battle. Staff Sergeant Cole. Or is it civilian now? Just Cole, sir. These days. He nodded, approaching the bar. I heard about your consulting work. Good things. You and Kane have built quite a reputation. We try. And you're still together? After everything? Cole glanced across the room, where Ava was talking with 2 junior SEALs who had joined the teams after her retirement, explaining something with her hands, demonstrating a technique. The young operators hung on every word. Yes, sir. Still together. Phillips followed her gaze. She looks good. Better than I expected, honestly. She's strong. Stronger than anyone I've ever known. Including yourself? Cole considered the question. No, I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn. Phillips laughed, a rare sound from a man who had seen too much to laugh easily. Stubborn counts for a lot in this business. He raised his glass. To the ones we lost, and to the ones who came back. To all of them. They drank. Across the room, Ava looked up, caught Cole's eye, and smiled. A small smile. A private smile. The smile of a woman who had walked through fire and found someone worth walking with. Later that night, after the memorial and the drinks and the stories that couldn't be told anywhere else, they stood on the beach where it all began. Not Afghanistan, that was too far to reach, but Virginia Beach, where they'd first been assigned to the same unit, where they'd first learned each other's rhythms, where the partnership had started before either of them knew what it would become. I used to hate this beach, Ava said. The waves were gentle, lapping at the sand like an afterthought. Too crowded, too civilian, not enough danger. And now it feels like home. She turned to face Cole. You feel like home. That's either very romantic or very codependent. Why can't it be both? Cole laughed. Ava laughed. And for a moment, in the darkness with the ocean as their witness, they were just 2 people who had found each other against impossible odds. Ghost Echo, this is Frostbite, Ava said softly, using the radio cadence that had become their private language. Target acquired. Final shot of the night. Send it. Ava kissed her. Soft at first, then deeper. The kind of kiss that said everything that words couldn't. 3 years of silence, one night of nearly dying, and a lifetime of what came after. When they finally pulled apart, the stars were out. The same stars that had watched over them in Afghanistan. The same stars that would watch over them wherever they went next. Good shot, Cole whispered. Best one I ever took. They walked back to the car, hands intertwined, leaving footprints in the sand that the tide would wash away before morning. But some things didn't need to leave physical traces. Some things lived in the space between heartbeats, in the calls that reached through death itself, in the partnerships that endured when everything else fell apart. This was their story, not the one they'd planned, not the one they'd expected, but theirs nonetheless, and it was only beginning.